We're still morning. In Miami, well, not really officially in Miami. I'm actually in a little more north in Boynton Beach, but joining you today as a presenter. My background is I'm a teacher, and I have been a teacher for years. But within the last 2 years, I took a role working at Adobe. And so for those of you joining, I'm kind of curious, like how, since we're such a small chat, I'm not going to use polls. It doesn't really make sense. There's not that many of us here. So I'm going to ask questions, and I want you to participate by answering the questions in the chat. So this is really going to be back and forth, and I want it to feel like it's more of a discussion and a conversation more than anything. So just out of curiosity, have any of you ever used any Adobe or Adobe tools? I'm just kind of curious what you know about Adobe. So if you're joining, please go ahead and just, let me know in the chat. But I work at Adobe as the education evangelist, which is a bit of a mouthful of a title, but basically my role is to help schools, teachers and students understand, how they can really bring creativity to life. So if you're a teacher, how can you be more creative with students, and how can we encourage and inspire students to be more creative, and work with teachers and students to understand, the power of storytelling and the importance of being a creator and being able to tell your story. So I actually was teaching a class right here in Florida at North Broward Prep in Coconut Creek. And I taught this class called Personal Branding and Digital Communication. And really the premise of this class was, how might we leverage social media and technology to tell compelling stories? And this is kind of our everyday life, isn't it? A lot of you are already on social media, for sure. You're connected, you're using technology constantly, but how are you necessarily using it to really get connected with people, with areas of interest, with college recruiters, or potentially with apprenticeships or internships? How are you leveraging these tools in a way that really showcases the parts of your personality or of your skills or of your interests that you really want to share with the world? And so this was actually a course that I taught for like 12 weeks. It was a trimester course, and so there was a whole program that was attached to it. But for today's session, I'm going to just very briefly kind of talk over some high level points. We're going to look at a little bit at why this is important, but I won't delve too much into it, because if you're here, you probably assume that it's important, right? You're figuring out college readiness or career readiness, and you're thinking about your future. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some tools, a handful, one that's free, that's super easy. And I'm going to really quickly go over this particular tool with you to get you thinking about things that you can do to kind of start developing some of the things that I'm going to be speaking about with you today. All right, so few things that we would think about. What are some of the skills, right, that you're thinking about as you're entering this space? Now, keep in mind, I taught this course, and then I was recruited to work at Adobe. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I was recruited because I had a digital presence, because I had a social media presence, because I knew how to leverage social media and hashtags and connect with the network and learned how to network. And so these really marketable skills proved to be super useful. And you would be surprised thinking that I work in one of the Fortune 500 companies, one of the best 100 companies to work at in the world, ranked every year for 22 years, that you would have more people that understand how to do this. But the truth is, this is a really emerging space. It's an emerging skill. And to be honest, I think a lot more students think about this than probably a lot of adults. So you're at a much bigger advantage coming into this world because this is your world, right? So some of the things that we often think about when I'm teaching these skills are I'm thinking about ways that you can create more effectively. So I call those creation literacies. So do we know how to, pull together, visuals, images, videos, web pages? Or do we have the skills to do things like that to be able to visually tell our stories? I teach a lot about design principles, and I'm going to share a few with you in this session today. So thinking about aesthetics, how to create a presentation, a visual, a video in a way that is visually compelling and that will bring an audience back to your work. We talk a lot about communication skills in multimedia, how to present more effectively, how to have better presentations, and how to think about the way that you put things on to a presentation, not having too many words, less is more white space, more visuals, visual breathing room, and then how you speak to that presentation. And then, of course, networking skills. And this is the ability to understand that you don't necessarily even have to be in person to learn how to network. Using tools or websites like Twitter, LinkedIn, being super scrappy and thinking about emerging technologies like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces to network. So understanding that there are lots of ways that you can connect with people, and I don't mean socialize, right? Because, of course we use social media to socialize. I mean, how are we using the social media that's available to connect with an audience or to connect with individuals that share your interests or that you can learn with or from? And then ultimately an understanding of how to use all these tools in tandem, learning how to have better organizational skills digitally and how to create things that are more complex when you learn how to use the tools more effectively. So that fluency part is essential. And so these skills ultimately help you not only be digitally literate, but they help you be fluent. So the difference between literacy and fluency is this. If you can read, that's great. If you know how to read and write, you're essentially literate. But when you were learning to read, one of the things that you had to do was learn how to say the words so that you weren't sounding them out all the time. And then the moment that you learned how to read, you became more fluent. It didn't necessarily mean that you understood everything you were reading, but that fluency means that you knew how to put things together in a really clear and concise way. So when you're using these technology and these tools and all of these skills together, you are becoming a more fluent user of technology. Now, as I kind of break in away from the big overarching agenda of what we're, some of the skills that I'm going to talk about today, I want to start with this question with you. And I think this is a really, an interesting perspective to think about. But I want to ask you this question. What are the 3 top words that define you? The way that you see yourself. If you were to choose 3 words, what would those 3 words be? So I'm not sure if you're on live. I'm not 100% sure if I'm still, if this is anybody here? I'm not sure. Yes, okay. Just making sure. I was like, oh my goodness, am I still? That's the weird part about presenting on these things. Wonderful. Yes. So if you were to think about 3 words that you would say help define the way you see yourself, take a moment. You're good. Think about those words. But I would love for you to share in the chat what you feel are those 3 words. Don't be shy. This is only as good as you help me do it. I know. And you know what? It doesn't have to necessarily, I know, and it's hard when you say, what are 3 words that define me? I mean, how can I be defined in just 3 words? So I like that. Sophia's kind of given it a go, right? Spontaneous, creative, and complex. I like that a lot. Politically active, hardworking, and ambitious. I love that. Confident, unique, hard worker, determined, organized, outgoing. Thank you, Bianca. Jennifer says hard worker, creative, and determined. Wonderful. Mentally tough. I like that. Focused, hard worker. Wow, we have like a solid group of achievers here. I love it. Ambitious, creative, and driven. Loud, spontaneous. Alexandra, I need this loud. I love it. Driven. Wonderful. So these are great words, right? If I were to, try to think of 3 words that I would hope that would define me. So keep in mind, just to give some context, as a teacher, I love teaching. It's literally my life. I mean, I hope that my energy and my love for what I do will come through in this presentation today. But I was a high school teacher, and Jennifer, Adrian, Mason, Alexandra, Rodrigo, Sophia, Victor, Melissa, you would have been my babies, okay? You know that. Like this, this is my life. So when I think about how I would want to be remembered, right, as a teacher, I would hope that I would be remembered as passionate, empathetic, and kind. I think that that's really important skills to have as a teacher, right? So I promise I'm going somewhere with this. I swear I have a purpose. So when we think about those words that define us, I want to kind of take us back for a second, and I'm going to share a story with you. And I'm actually going to pause this for a second. I'm actually going to open something else because this story is actually on another presentation. I'm like, what's it called? All right. So I want you to take a second right now, and I want you to Google yourself. Sorry, not Google yourself. I want you to Google Samantha Gowdy. Hold on. I can't unfortunately present it because it didn't, I lose your screen. So I'm just going to do it this way for now. So Alexandra, thank you. Melissa, you're so sweet. Okay. So I want you to Google this name, Samantha Gowdy. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be rude to this person, but I want to kind of just have a conversation a little bit about, when we talk about the words that define us or how we want to be remembered or the things that we share, I think it's really important that we contextualize that. So as you're Googling Samantha Gowdy, I'd love for you to share with me what you find. So what do you find? What are the things that are popping out from your search with Samantha Gowdy? Feel free, take a second, and then tell me what you find in the chat. I'll give you a moment. What's popping up? What do you see? Oh, fantastic. I'm glad that you're finding that. Mental health awareness advocate. Okay, her socials. Alcohol. Okay. Interesting. You're doing some digging. You didn't think you were going to come here and stalk someone. Vodka Sam. Yes. So what you're finding right now, pictures of her, right, are the things that, unfortunately, when you think, not necessarily think of her, right, but when you Google her, these are the things that you're popping up, right? So you're learning a little bit about Samantha. And here I'm actually going to go ahead with you. Samantha And I apologize in advance if there's things that are inappropriate. I'm gonna be, really frank that could happen, right? So Samantha Godey, so Huffington Post, right? Instagram, volunteer, okay, Vodka Sam, okay. So these are some of the things that were popping up that you find about her. And so this is really what happened, okay? Let me present really quickly. So Sam, Vodka Sam, okay, was a student in Iowa. And what happened was, this is, I don't recommend this obviously, but she made a huge mistake one evening where she got drunk in college and ended up in jail and tweeted this: "Just went to jail, hashtag YOLO." Now I know that might seem funny, or, that it's kind of like, wait, what were you thinking, right? But, keep in mind, like, this happened quite a few years ago. And when we look at, the fact that all these years later, this is still, unfortunately, like, look at that, 2013, okay? This, unfortunately, still really is such a big part of her life. And so here, if you look down, February 2021, Samantha speaking for the first time, okay? So all these years, she's still paying for that, that moment in her life where really it was probably, one evening, one bad choice, one big mistake that unfortunately really probably has defined a lot of the rest of the trajectory of her life. Now, let's contextualize this for a second. I hear us saying, like, how would you define yourself? Rodrigo said creative, hard worker, curious. Alexandra said loud, spontaneous, driven. Mason said ambitious, creative, and driven, right? Do you think Samantha would define herself as, a drunken, like whatever it is that she's seen as, right? No, of course not, right? She made a mistake. She is probably a really good person. There's probably so many great qualities. She would never see herself that way. But unfortunately, that is still a big part of her world. And here's the issue with Samantha. Samantha does not know how to work social, because she could have turned this around, okay? If Samantha, I'm glad that you saw that she was, that one thing about mental health awareness advocate, she should be doing webinars on that. She should be on Twitter tweeting about that. She should be taking this horrible event. And if I were to give her advice to build her social media presence, if she built her social media presence and turned it around and took ownership of the conversation to tell a different narrative, she'd be very differently seen right now. And I almost wish I could give her that advice. Maybe I should. I don't know. I don't know if that's appropriate. But this is what I'm trying to say. Like, there are ways of owning your story. I'm going to show you another example. I want you to Google this person. Her name is Beverly Pham. Go for it. Tell me what you find when you Google Beverly Pham. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. So what are some of the things that you find right away? NFL Sundays. Woo! Editorial designer for Fox. Yep. Reporter. Awesome. Yes. So this branding. Yeah. So this is Beverly Pham. Okay. She has since graduated from USC. And, she's got a pretty incredible social media presence, right? Right away, we see her Twitter, we see Instagram, we see her webpage, we see her LinkedIn, and we see YouTube, okay? All of these different social media all of these 4 first pieces that you find, she owns. She controls her story. She owns her narrative, okay? And I want to share a little bit more about Beverly. Beverly is one of my favorite success stories for really understanding how to tell your story. So I actually learned about Beverly from a friend of mine who was her teacher back in the day. I think this was 2013. And her teacher, his name is David Terrio. He's a good friend of mine. He teaches English in Long Beach, California. And she was in his class, and I found this tweet, and I was like, what is this? Like, this is a high school student, and like her English homework was to create a creative resume, and like this is what she did. And I was like, who is this? I mean, she clearly had her high hopes of what she wanted to do and of where she wanted to go, even in 2013. This was in high school. And so I saw this kind of thread unfold on social media, and my friend said, hey, great tips. Any tips for my students? And then she wrote, just be creative and you'll get noticed. Case in point, this video I made to help me get noticed by some very important people. And this is what she made.
My mailbox is empty every single day, not an acceptance to be seen. My dream school is USC, but I guess it's not for me. All of my life I've dreamed of cardinal and gold. I set my common epic and there's a tree. Don't get those B's, don't get those C's. Get a high score on the SAT. Prevail, don't fail, don't go to jail. Or say bye to you. They said no, don't have space for you anymore. They said no, then again I'm way too poor. No job yet, so I'll be drowning in student debt. It's better off this way. Rejections never bother me anyway.
Okay, so it goes on for I think a minute or two more, but just needless to say, Beverly Pham ended up getting into her dream school. So what happened was Beverly was a student that was super creative, but didn't necessarily test well. I don't know about you guys. I can relate to that. I don't test well. I have never tested well. If I were to do the SATs today, I would never get into good schools, period. I grew up in Montreal, Canada, so luckily for me, I didn't have to take SATs. I created a portfolio instead. And a lot of colleges now are rethinking SATs and they're looking at portfolios, and this is a big kind of step in that right direction. But Beverly was rejected. Yes, terrible. Tests suck. They don't measure what they should measure. Let's be real. I can say that. I don't work at the district. I can be real, right? Those tests are not for you. They're for adults. What you need to do is find ways to be super creative, to show yourself and make yourself shine in spite of what your test scores might be. Beverly is the best example I've ever seen because she was rejected to the schools that she was applying for. And instead of sitting back and going, I am a failure, I will never amount to anything, I can't get in, and going into a spiraling, depression of despair, she decided, you know what, I am creative, I deserve to be there, and I'm gonna be seen. So when she was rejected, she contacted the schools and told them to Google her. Legit. She said, Google me. And then she tagged the colleges on Twitter to this video of her college rejection parody because it went pretty viral. People were sharing it. It was really impressive. And guess what? She got in. She ended up getting into her dream school. In the end, it was a happy story. But I say this because you are not at the mercy of what, your test scores don't define who you are. right? All of you who said, I'm a terrible test taker, same, true. You know, if you probably earlier on did not say, you know, terrible test taker is what defines you or whatever. You probably, I mean, I have to go back and look, but those are not the words that define us. So we can tell our own stories. You can leverage media, technology, social media, own it so that you can say the things that really are what you feel you want others to see. So here's what I want you to do now. I told you it was gonna be a little all over the place. Here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to Google yourself. And if you feel so brave, tell me what you find on the first page, a few of the things. Go for it. I'm gonna give you a second. Google yourself. That's what I want you to do right now. Google yourself. Sophia, no, not yikes. This is not so scary. Well, maybe, you know, if it is, then you are in the right place because it's never too late. And if you're not Vodka Sam, you're in a much better position right off the bat, okay? With all due respect to Vodka Sam. You know, if you haven't gotten there yet, then you're in a good place, even if it's not great. Oh, wonderful, Victor, I found a music, oh, there you go. Victor, that, thank God it's not someone with a jail profile, right? That's good. And I'm not saying that to be like funny, I'm serious. So good, what else do we find? Do you find, not because I do anything bad, it's just scary to know that people can look me up. Oh my God, Sophia, I so hear you. But here's the reality, okay? As you guys are looking this up, I wanna just say this. And this was part of what I wrote in the profile for you to come to my session today. One day you're going to be Googled, not if, but when, right? It's not if anymore, it's when. And when you are Googled, and if you're not Googling yourself, you should be Googling yourself all the time. That sounds super narcissistic, but you need to know what's being said because the reality is your future employer, 100% for jobs that you are going to apply for will Google you, period. Period. Okay, they will Google to see what pops up. 2, okay, college recruiters, they do, like there are some colleges, depending on programs, they will look at that. Sports scouts, if you're applying for scholarships, they look at that. 100%, some colleges have you turn in your social media. Like it's bonkers, you know, for some college sports. Your future spouse, okay, your future husband, partner, wife is gonna Google you. Ladies, you know you've done it already for boys around you. You know, gentlemen, you do the same thing. Let's give me a break. If you say you don't, that's not true at all. That is the reality, right? We check out people's social media. We stalk them on online. Like that's the reality, okay? But there's something that we need to think about, right? And some of you have super common names like Rodrigo Gonzalez, like for sure. Thank goodness, you know, you found a singer-songer. No, Alexandra, that's not what I'm saying. Don't delete Twitter. I'm gonna show you what, here's what you need to be thinking about, okay? Because I think I'm giving you the wrong message. The point of this is that when you Google yourself, you are telling the story that you want. Oops, let me take out Adobe. I must have searched that the other day. Okay, what popped up? All right, so here's my profile right now. This is what you find, and keep in mind, I don't have a super, hi, Dr. Dia, so nice to see you too. So I don't have a really common name, right? You know, if my last name was Gonzalez, you know, it might be very difficult to find myself. So of course I recognize that I have a super uncommon name. But let me explain to you something. Even with an uncommon name or common name, okay, I'm gonna explain both. If you have an uncommon name, even more the reason that you need to be on top of your digital presence, okay? Because the reality is, if I have an uncommon name and somebody, you know, decides to write something about me and I have nothing on there, who's telling my story? Who's popping up first when they Google me? Is it me or is it somebody else who wrote something about me, right? And ultimately, I want to be the person that is in charge of the narrative that's going on online. I want to control what is being said and how it's being said. And the way I do that is I own my digital identity. And owning your digital identity is not rocket science stuff. I mean, it's really about being able to pull together your own narrative using social media. So Sophia says, so do you mean to try to present ourselves positively, not in a fake way, because that means that we control what people perceive of us? Yes, Sophia, exactly. Right? And I'm going to share some student examples in a minute. I promise. I have some. Okay. I'm going to show one that's really one of my very favorites that I love to show. It was from a student of mine. So right here, what I'm showing you here are a few of like my own things, right? So first off, I have my .com. So you're going to think I'm bonkers, but my daughter is 13 and my son is 9. And I own their .coms. I didn't name them until I made sure that their .com, like their full name .com, was available. Okay, and I'm going to give you some perspective of how, I know you're going to think I'm crazy. Some of you might be laughing, but I've been thinking about this stuff and talking about it for over a decade. My daughter's 13, so 14 years, like I was talking about this very early on. This is stuff I've been teaching for a very long time. And so I just want to give you some perspective because my son's name is Gabriel Varga, okay? Now, Gabriel Varga happens to be a world-renowned kickboxer fighter, okay? Here it says karate practitioner from Canada. But I want to show you something, okay? If we were to go to Gabriel Varga and try to find his webpage, look what's going on here. Okay, first of all, you find a lot of stuff, but like, where's his webpage? Okay, so Gabriel Varga. All right, well, Gabriel Varga used to be GabrielVarga.ca. Okay, he's no longer. GabrielVarga.com. Well, look at that. Gabriel doesn't have that. So what did he do? Well, let me tell you something. He doesn't own his .com because guess what? My 9-year-old son owns it. And when it was time for him to purchase that, it was too late. He didn't have it. I know that this is horrible and it must suck for him, but he had to come up with an alternative because he couldn't own his name. So what did he do? Gabriel Varga, I think it's official. But I mean, like, how sad is that? That like he doesn't own his webpage. Here it is. Gabriel Varga official. I know Sophia's laughing. I'm not even lying. I own that Bluehost domain. My son, who's 9, has had it since 10 years ago. And Gabriel Varga didn't stand a chance when it was time for him to purchase. And so I don't know if you can see that, but right here, Gabriel Varga official. It's funny, but the reality is that's a prime piece of real estate that was purchased 10 years ago that I bet you if I wanted to sell to somebody right now, Gabriel Varga, he might actually pay. Maybe not anymore because it's Gabriel Varga official. He had to make his site official. Hilarious. But in the end, my son still owns his .com. He owns his name. And I, own my little piece of real estate that I put, actually it's not so great. Don't check it out. I have to update it. But the point is I can update it. It's mine. It's the first thing that you find when you Google me. You also find my Twitter. Twitter is a great tool to help build this kind of, so this is SEO, search engine optimization. So understanding how keywords play a part and understanding that there are some websites that will rank higher than others. The websites that often rank highest are ones with really high quality links. And the way that you build really high quality links is by sharing good content that goes back to other good content that's high quality, and also using hashtags, especially on Twitter. So when you're building out, this is really helpful to understand. There's people who literally get like degrees in this and business degrees, okay? Right, Sophia? True. Now that I think I've thought about making brands before and things, that first thing I do is look it up. And yes, exactly. Social is going to pop up first. So as a person, you can really, and even like down the line when you work at companies, guys, this is stuff that people don't really know, which is mind blowing, but it's true. Okay. Like I work with a lot of people who go to like Harvard and Stanford, or went to like Harvard and Stanford. I didn't. And like, they don't know this stuff. This is stuff that's not necessarily known. So these are good skills to understand. But when you start, look what's, that picture was so cringy. I'm so sorry. But when you start, looking up, like, what are the things that pop up? Okay. My .com, my Twitter, my LinkedIn. Okay, I also blog on Adobe's blog. And that's a high quality blog, so it'll rank higher. You find things from Facebook. I wrote a book, which is ironic that it wouldn't be first, but it's not. So my book pops up, Instagram, things, blogs that are popular that I've been a guest on, YouTube. But all of these things are things that I've written, that I've contributed to. I own my digital presence. And of course I'm older, but this is stuff I've been doing for a long time. And so I understand some of you might not necessarily own your names right now, but you know what? You can find ways to lead people to your name. One example of that, is just by posting things in a portfolio or on a blog, or even just using Twitter as a space to share your own kind of like accomplishments. And something, because remember I taught this class, right? So one of my students, Christian Doller, he is now he's a junior at the school I used to teach at. And so this is his Twitter. Oh, am I not sharing my screen anymore? Am I sharing my screen? Okay. Phew. You should be seeing, okay, phew. You should be seeing Christian Doller's Twitter. Okay, good. Phew. I just had a heart attack. Like, have I been talking to you and you haven't been seeing what I've been showing you? Oh no, Adrian, that's so bizarre. I don't know why you can't see my screen. Maybe one of the moderators in the chat might be able to help you with that. I'm not really sure. I'm definitely showing it. You should be seeing Twitter, Christian Doller. Okay, so this is my student, Christian Doller. And he took my class when he was a freshman, and now he's a junior. And he's like on the varsity soccer team. He is an incredibly talented athlete, and he really posts a lot about his accomplishments, his games. Sometimes he shares some of the stuff that he's excited about. It shows a little bit of his personality. Look how cool that is. That's him, actually. He retweets things that the coach is sharing. That's really actually so cool. But, if I was a college recruiter, and he'll tag colleges, recruiters, teams, I've seen him do it a ton. And so it's really smart because he is starting to build out the story that he wants to tell. And look, he probably uses Snapchat. Snapchat is like where he will socialize. It's not going to develop out his professional space. But he uses this as a place to really share the things that he's passionate about. And one of the things that he did in my class was he created this portfolio. So this is using Adobe Spark, and that's a free tool that you should have access to at your school. If you don't have access to Spark, it's also free. You can make your own account, but you should use the one, like if you can use the one at school, use it at school as well, because you get all the branding features. But look at this. So this is attached to his Twitter profile. And so this Twitter profile is literally intended to have people look at him, his passion, and his interests. It is not for socializing. It's not intended for his friends. He literally has created this for the purpose of developing his personal story and telling it the way he wants to. Okay, so he's created this web page, which is super easy to do, and I'll show you in a second how these tools work. And so here, because I would have my students create their brands, a logo. In this case, I had them create an introduction video. So if you go on, you want to learn a little bit more about him, you can press the video, it'll play. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but you can learn a little bit in this one introduction.
My name is Christian Mercury Dolar, and this webpage focuses on the path that I am undertaking.
It's great. So he's introducing himself, a little bit about his passion, a little bit about him. So if you're a college recruiter and you're searching through and you're tagged on this kid, this is super impressive because A, not many students are doing this, and B, it actually looks really good and professional for high school students. And so he shares a little bit about himself, about his journey as a player, and kind of where he's pushing himself to go in his accomplishments and then his future goals. So it's super, super easy to create, and it's connected to his social media presence. So when I look up, and actually I've never done this, I should, Christian Dolar. When I look up Christian Dolar, what are the things that I'm going to find? There we go. Boom. Christian Dolar. This is so perfect. Christian Dolar's men's soccer recruiting profile. Smart boy. Number 2, his Twitter. And when you Google and when you go on his Twitter, he's telling that story. And Christian is one of my, like I taught him 2 years ago. He is a junior. So this is super attainable, right? So, you know, obviously I can't teach a whole course now, right? This is a 12-week course, but I'm going to give you some strategies to kind of think about to help you get started on your own path for developing out your own story if you so wish, okay? So actually, how much time do we have left in this session? I could hang out with you guys all day, to be honest. So, oh, just a few minutes. Oh, that's such a bummer. Okay. So in the last few minutes that I have, and I'm actually going to do this because I want to make sure you have my session and my materials. So I'm going to go paste. Okay. So, you know, I have resources that are connected to this presentation. But as I said, like you really want to be able, and I have examples, student examples here that you can look at. You really want to be thinking about the way that you are pulling together your story. And some of the things that I focus on when I'm teaching my students are like how to do it in a more beautiful, aesthetic way. And obviously I don't have much time with you guys, but just a few things. First of all, use visuals, okay? When you're creating content, if you're creating social media content, if you're creating a Twitter profile, LinkedIn, if you have a message, attach that message with a visual. People, there's research that's been done on this. I don't know the exact statistics, but people are way more likely to click on your content if you have a visual that helps kind of synthesize some of what you're trying to get across attached to it. So if you have a web page, if you are sharing or even better, like a video is even more engaging on social. And take it one step further, more people are likely to watch your video if you add closed captions on social than if you don't. Because not everyone, and you know this, right? Because you're a consumer of this, you're more likely going to read the video sometimes than play it, given what time it is, where you're located. So your content gets more play. So these are just some tricks of the trade that I'm sharing with you. Isn't that why there are classes like digital design? Absolutely. But the truth is not everyone takes digital design. I don't know if you're all in digital design courses. I know this is more CTE oriented, which is so fantastic, but I often think, well, these aren't just for kids that are in CTE. Like you can learn these skills and not necessarily have to be a creator using some of our more high-tech tools. And keep in mind, I work at Adobe. Like for me to say that, I think is very telling because there, you know, of course you want to be able to do more and create with Premiere Pro and like be able to like really manipulate visuals with Photoshop, or create logos using Illustrator, or tell visuals, create illustrations. Yes, but that's not everyone needs to have that level of skill to create in this way. You can use things like Adobe Spark or slides, or, you know, to create things that are visually compelling as you're getting started. You know, you know, one of the other things is like using white space. That's super straightforward, not having too much on the page. You know, less is more, having visual breathing room, you know, so that way you're not having these clumped up visuals. And then I always say, like, when you add a grid to any design, just these are super foundational skills. You're able to really like take your design skills to the next level. So just applying like these 4 strategies of like using visuals, using white space, using visual breathing room, and adding a grid. If you were to apply those 4 skills tomorrow, when you're thinking about creating a visual, if you have no background in graphic design, this would be helping you so much to rethink your visuals and the way you create them. I'm not going to get into that. And I'm just going to really quickly like share, like, Adobe Spark is a really great tool. I don't have a lot of time to get into it, but honestly, check out, just Google Adobe Spark. I think you have it with your school. So log in with your, if you can, log in with your school account. Try it that way, because there's a, like when you go in, it's going to say spark.adobe.com. I'm actually logged in right now, but it's going to show up and it's going to say like log in with your Gmail, blah, 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 blah. Or on the right, it's going to say log in with your school account. So when you're in here, it's really straightforward. You can create graphics. Okay, so I can choose from a variety. I can create my social graphics here. So if I wanted to really like take my social profile and like up level it, it even has like, let's say I was doing, you know, Instagram and I wanted to make visuals. There we go. So your teacher is asking you to sign in using your school credentials. So you have access. So when you go in, if I go into templates, there's all these templates, and because you have a school account, you can even remix these templates that even have the upgraded, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the upgraded, oh, my brain is not working. But anyways, you have access to all the upgraded, like really beautiful templates as well. So like if I were to go here and I want to remix, I could use this and start from there to create, you know, visually compelling stories and visuals. And I could also, you know, I'm just going here for a second. I could also go in here. I can create a web page. That's a portfolio. So like, I wish I had more time with you guys. So I'm going to start from scratch. Oh, this is actually a video. Sorry. So if I were going to create a video and I wanted to really quickly create something like to share a little bit more about me, the way Christian did, I could go in here. I can add video clips, texts. I can add photos. I could take photos on here. I can upload them. I can find from free photos. So if you wanted to tell something and you didn't have any good imagery, it has beautiful stock imagery that you can tell, you know, beautiful, compelling stories with. So like that's another thing. And I'm really doing a high level, but honestly, it's so easy to use. I promise you're going to go in and within like just a few moments, you would figure this out really, really fast. This is an example of a page. It's actually my son's art portfolio. And he was in 2nd grade at the time. And you know, we curated his art into like a digital portfolio. So just to kind of show you how straightforward this is, when you scroll down, the little plus button gives you options. So like, for example, if I were to add a photo, text, button, and the more you scroll, you add different layouts and you add content to the page. So I'm just gonna go to the bottom. So if I wanted to add a photo grid, it looks like that. So I can upload photos. So it's pretty straightforward. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't take long to create one of these. But when you're ready, you share it and you publish that, and you have this beautiful, gorgeous, demonstration of your learning that really, as Christian has done, really does the work for you to share what you want to share. Now, add some social media into the mix, and you're at the beginnings of really being able to tell your story. So we are actually at time. And I really enjoyed meeting with all of you. And I hope that you, are walking away with some ideas and strategies. I didn't get into it too much. I know I wish there was more time too, but I really did feel like I needed to spend a little of time explaining why, because I think it helps you understand how it comes together when you're creating for a purpose, right? Very often we do things and we don't understand why we're doing them. And I wanted to make sure you were starting with the end in mind. Like, why is it so important for you to create your portfolio or to use social media? Because it lets you control your story. And I hope that from this small session with me today, that you are inspired to go off and tell your story. So thank you all so much. Please feel free to, follow me on Twitter once you join. I would love to see some of you there. Or add me on LinkedIn. That is a really good, powerful one. Or, if you have any questions, here, I'm going to just leave you my email. I love working with students way more. No, that's going to sound terrible. I love working with teachers too, but I am a teacher at heart. And so anytime you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email and I'd be happy to answer. So thank you all so much for joining today. And I wish you all the best and good luck in your future endeavors. Bye, everybody.